Hey, you're listening to The Good Pod Guide with me, Lauren Windle. I'm going to give you the lowdown on some of the biggest podcasts, as well as some hidden gems, to help you find your next great listen. Whenever we talk about murder on the podcast, all I hear is my friend's voice in my head because she only ever says the word murder with a Scottish accent. She always says murder. And when someone else says it in conversation, she'll jump in to say it in a Scottish accent. I think it must be a Macbeth thing. Was that set in Scotland? It's all I hear. Every time we do a true crime one, every time I say the word murder, I'm like, murder. Anyway, we are, as you've probably guessed, today talking about murder, or at least suspected murder. We're talking about The Teacher's Pet. This is my favorite Australian podcast. I actually don't think we've covered an Australian podcast yet, but this is such a good one. I listened to it back in 2018 when I was traveling around Colombia, and I can literally picture myself in this budget hostel on the bottom bunk of this dorm, watching the bugs collect on my mosquito net while this podcast was ringing in my ears. It's about the disappearance of a woman called Lyn Dawson that happened back in 1982. She's still never been found. And unlike a lot of other true crime podcasts, this one actually pushed the story forward. So it's on a par with Serial in that sense. They do uncover new evidence. They do push for further action. And in fact, back in April 2019, on the advice of the Office of the New South Wales Director for Public Prosecutions, that was a mouthful, The Australian, which is the newspaper that commissioned and published the podcast, removed The Teacher's Pet from download in Australia because there was a court case pending and they didn't want to prejudice the trial. That's how influential this podcast was when it came out. It is still available in countries that aren't Australia. And I think that you can still get it on social media in some places in Australia, but don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. I'm not in Australia. It's hosted by Hedley Thomas, who is an award-winning investigative journalist. And I don't want to go into too many details about their findings in this investigation, although actually for once, this time I could do if I wanted to, because I have actually finished the full podcast. But there are loads of revelations and things that are unraveled. And there's so much intrigue and there's affairs. And then obviously the title Teacher's Pet implies that there's sort of teacher-student interactions. And you've got all of those mysteries to look forward to. There are 14 episodes with bonus episodes as the story progressed in real time, and they're about an hour long each, apart from the last one, which is 2 hours. I would say that about 2/3 of the way through, it started to drag a little for me, but that's not me saying don't listen to it. It's just me saying prepare yourself to push through, because I pushed through and I'm pleased I did. As of 2020, the series had close to 30 million downloads, and it had reached number one in the podcast charts in Australia, the UK, Canada, and New Zealand. And you just can't argue with those figures. People loved it. People loved unraveling the mystery, seeking justice, and working out exactly what the truth was. And I have to say, so did I. In the next episode, you'll hear me get the heebie-jeebies as I review podcast 10 Things That Scare Me. For more info on The Good Pod Guide, check out the show notes. Also, if you liked what you've heard, like, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It makes a big difference.